ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Podcast Juice. My name is Michael Dean. Joining me today, she's been here many times before. I would consider her part of the show at this point. But India,
Ah,
how you doing? Yeah, absolutely.
thank you. I love being an honorary recurring guest, I guess you can say, right?
Absolutely. You
And
family.
I'm family.
There you
I
go.
love that. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. Happy to get back on here and talk some good Prince and good music. And who a better place and a better person to start with than yourself? And let's just get right into it. What we're going to
Mhm.
be talking about today is, I guess what I would call like our favorite run of Prince. What I mean by that, like if you were talking with a friend of yours, or I wanted to get somebody into Prince, you would be like, you know what? Start with this. Like I've curated a set here for you, and in
Mhm.
our particular case, it's going to be albums. But here is a great place to start. You're going to get everything from this, and we're going to explain our picks as well. And so, are
Mhm.
you ready to do that?
Yeah, of
Mm.
course.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. So, without further ado, I've sort of maybe shown the first one here, but let's have a conversation. India, talk us through, your favorite Prince run that you want to suggest today.
Alrighty. So I chose kind of like the first section of the 90s. So from 1991. I would have chose Graffiti Bridge, but honestly, I think Diamonds and
Mm.
Pearls is a great way to mark the I think this is the part when he or the point in his career where he renegotiated with Warner Brothers, and we go from, oh, we are in this great deal with Warner Brothers, we're in this position, to the ending part of this
Mm.
run that I have from absolute freedom and independence. And so I think just as an artist, this is a great learning journey in the creative process, in the business process,
Mm.
performance wise, how he's evolved. He went from the nude tour prior to this to building grand sets and having dancers like Maite, especially with Diamonds and Pearls for Act One and Act Two. And then you go on to having Glam Slam, establishing those clubs. Like, it's just so much going on in terms of entrepreneurship, uh, music wise. He's doing a lot of experimentation, working with people outside of the camp, like Moni Love, doing Carmen Electric
Okay.
stuff, working with Shock G. All of these people are in Ice Cube. It's just a melting pot right now. And
Mm.
I love this 90s period because you really get to see him take all of these genres and make it his own. Like,
Mm.
see him taking stuff for, reggae, dance hall with Blue Light, which will be the love symbol. I know we're on Diamonds and Pearls, but
Mm.
we see him take hip hop and just interpret hip hop, because honestly, hip hop is what it is to you. It is not defined by anybody else. I mean, we can define it academically by all of its pillars, DJing, MCing, all of that. But rap culture is separate from hip hop. We also have to make that clear,
Mm.
So
Mm.
um, but he is true bone hip hop, from the choices that he makes, and even just the style, the fashion, the ideology, everything here. Just this whole run spells hip hop to me. And y'all know I'm already, if you can see, I have a Kendrick shirt on today, but I am a hip hop head, and I hang around a lot of hip hop heads. So this run right here, just to connect with their spirits and the folks
Mm.
that I kind of frequent and hang around, they would definitely be more inclined to or open to hearing this part of Prince. And especially, I also like Prince tapping into the more quiet stormness
You're,
coming on
you're,
here. So we got a lot of R&B just flowing and flowing, and I would say more than in the 80s that he did. This is definitely more the
interesting.
core of his R&B work. Um, Even down to working with drum pattern, drum machines, sampling himself,
You
live and in studio. Um, yeah, I'm on a rant, but
No, no,
that's
no. I mean, it brings you go back to the hip hop or rap part of it. I mean, it brings the rapper into the album. It's the
yeah,
first
yeah.
time the rapper is a part of the band.
hmm
It's a big
Tony
deal.
M,
Yeah.
all of that. So I mean, regardless of how you may feel about Tony M, you can't. I said this to him when I was at the event at Paisley for Diamonds and Pearls. We had the release party. you cannot discount the fact that they had absolute freedom in regards to hip hop. You know,
Yeah.
they tried everything, they did everything. And Prince allowed them a playground to lyrically, sonically, and visually to just play and experiment and, you know, be their own people inside of hip hop. And like, that's literally what's going on now. You've got the Tyler the Creators and so on and so forth. Like, people are just being them
Yeah.
and not trying to be hard all the time. Like, not everybody is hard. You know, I mean, and not to say that Tony M and them are not hard. They have, you know, they have their masculine energy that they project as well, but it's it's it takes hip hop out of the monolithic mold that people have tried to constantly put it in.
Hmm.
And I have to salute Prince for that, and Tony M for that, and just for people in his circle putting him on to stuff, you know, because you can. What I also like about this evolution from Diamonds and Pearls to Emancipation, you see the evolution of Prince beginning to just embrace and live in, you know, hip hop's essence. So
Yeah.
that for me was just is super important to see, and just see his growth, because we all have conflicting feelings, especially me as a woman in hip hop. You know, it's not easy, and it's, you know, almost border, it's misogynistic most of the time,
Yeah,
but
and I want to ask you about that later in another album that I think is going to be in your list. Just a
mhm.
couple of things. But go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, but I forgot what I don't know. Wait, no, it's okay. I just, it takes me a minute to get my thoughts, but yeah, just exploring the different views and the different lenses
Hmm.
that Black men
Mm.
experience in hip
Mm-hmm.
hop, which is important, and just Black people in general, like, you know, just, you know, people of color in general. So that's what I love about this period from Diamonds and Pearls to Emancipation. It's just his most expansive, uh, I would say, even creative. The creative output during this period was the most unique, and because he just tried everything, and he was recording everywhere from Miami to London to all of these different areas. He was not only was he recording constantly in Paisley Park, but outside of Paisley Park
Yeah.
too. So you
Yeah.
could see how certain atmospheres just shifted the way he his recording process in terms of like sonics. And I think, like, you know,
That's interesting.
reading a lot of books, like specifically my taste book and certain things, is just seeing where he was traveling during the 90s and that period. Randy, him being in LA a lot too, I think that was
Mhm.
formative. With Come, there's a lot of the West Coast influence for sure.
Let's
Default.
let's stop right there. So I want to just go back to Diamonds and Pearls, and we'll jump to the next album. But I think too, another important thing to add, this album was another starting point. I think you mentioned too, just of his career, and this was the first time you got to hear that band, like the real
Yeah,
band sound was the point of it. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just
yep,
one song. It was like it was presented as if, these people, the band members, they're playing on the record. You know what I
yes,
mean?
yeah,
Like, decidedly they're playing on the record. It wasn't like some of the other situations, like, no, they're playing on the record. So that was a
mhm.
big deal for Prince.
He
Uh,
didn't overdub people.
right.
It was actually them. It was
Yeah.
Levi. All of these, you know, it was just, and that's what I love, is that also this era, well, I would say at least to come from Diamonds and Pearls, a love symbol, there was a collaborative effort, and it was just a whole
Mm.
web of energy, and they were all feeding off of each other.
Mhm.
And even down to like the maxi singles and Prince clowning, calling his dad, like those moments, or calling bandmates sisters and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
like those, you could really feel the familial
Mhm.
energy from Prince, and you could just feel like he's comfortable, like he's good. He's with his folks, and he's just throwing down, and it kind of just sounds like you're sitting in a live band session, like you said. It's it sounds like we're sitting in a jam session, but something about it, I can't quite pinpoint like a specific term for it at this point, but just something about it feels just very familiar. You know, it feels uh what how would you describe it? I think the best way to, you know how like in African tradition when
Mhm.
you get into the circle. And it's same thing with hip hop. There's like this cipher going around. That's how I would
Yeah,
describe
yeah.
it. Just
I think
this
no,
I
I was
can't.
I was gonna
This
say, I think too, expand on that point, I felt
Mhm.
like the subject matter and, you talk about the camaraderie of the band. It was the
Yeah.
banter that you hear within the songs and, like, the interludes and just, like, when you saw them, the familiar part for me was like, "Oh, Prince is with real black folk." I mean, you know what I mean? It was like he was with real people. They
Yeah.
felt like they had their own identities. There were identities that I personally could identify, like, when I saw Tony
Mhm.
and Damon and them, I was like, "Oh, them's the homies." Like, Prince is
Right.
with the homies now. Okay. You know what I'm saying? When you saw, Sonny T and you heard him laugh,
Yeah.
that laugh was, "Oh, no, this is the laugh of when you're around your people and y'all crazy."
Yeah.
It was that type of family type of environment that you hadn't really you heard it a little bit, I think, I would say maybe, like, in some of the Time stuff. But
Yes. Yes.
when Prince sorta got into the real, you know, Prince superstar, he was on some other
Mhm.
stuff, you kinda didn't hear that, but this brought it back, I think too, uh, as much as we talked about the masculinity part, I think Prince also adopts the gangster machismo thing
Right.
wholeheartedly, right? Gangsta glam, like, he did his
Mhm.
own version of that, like,
Yep.
he had a gun microphone, like,
Yes.
which is a testament of the times, like, his gangster rap was ridiculous at that point, it was just
Right.
very, very big, and so even Prince, leans into that in his own sort of way, which was very interesting, just to throw in there too, and go back to you, the imagery that we saw, you mentioned the maxi singles,
Mhm.
the Get Off. Yeah, the Get Off one, uh, Oregon the
Silent
something,
the Emerging
Violet Grinder
Violent.
or whatever. I mean, the image you saw the black woman was like dark-skinned black woman was up front,
Yes.
that was a certain choice, like, okay, yeah,
Covered in gold,
yeah,
like,
so that was a
just
big deal, yeah.
and I have to, shout out to Randy St. Nicholas for that imagery because
Mm,
she did a that she literally that's my favorite Prince photography book ever
wow, okay.
because I just love the way she captured him during that time period. And funny enough, a lot of most of at least half of this cycle is in that book
Yeah,
of Prince. So I don't know. I just feel like visually he was on point, choosing the right people like Herb Ritz, all of these folks that were super prolific in terms of art and shape and paying
mm,
attention to visually how we're seeing him as this man in his 30s. Like he's navigating, and being in your 30s from your 20s is such a drastic change. So I just salute him becoming
mm.
his whole self at that point. Like he just felt comfortable. He
That's
felt completely comfortable.
he was in his 30s, I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Man, yeah, he was a grown ass man, but right when you start to really become a grown man, like, you know what I mean? Like, you start to,
Mhm.
okay, that's yeah. So I wanted to
Mhm.
play something, since we're at the Symbol album up, and we'll edit this so that it'll work, but, just get your quick thoughts on this. For me, when I think of this album, this is the first thing that pops in my mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Falsetto. Michael Bland's drumming. It's it
That's another
yeah, go ahead.
thing, like I'm sorry, just him, incorporating the next generation into this as well, like, just picking up the younger folks and being like, "Come on, let's go. Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I remember, listening to the Diamonds and Pearls podcast, and the one thing that, Michael Bland said that stood out to me was like asking Prince like mad questions and being like, should I do this? Should I do this? He's like, you should know this, basically. But he never like, he was so open to being a teacher at this point too, but also being taught because his OG was also in the band. So it was kind of like this cycle of learning that you can see. And that's what I love. It's intergenerational.
Yeah.
Like this entire point up to at least Diamonds and Pearls and Love Symbol before he kind of stopped having his band by his side. I guess Gold Experience too, because they kind of came back. Come was a little solo ish, but then the Gold Experience was, it did incorporate the MPG and then everything in between that they did on the side. But those, that period is just
Yeah.
that intergenerational connection that they all had, which is, I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry, I had to.
No, no, good. And let's slide into this. This Tony M.
Mhm.
You never heard nothing like this on a Prince record before.
No.
Scratching.
When I said,
And I was confused back then.
I was, no, I'm not gonna lie. I was very confused. And then I was like, but I like it.
Yeah.
But should I like it? And it was like, it was literally an inner turmoil thing. And I'm like, then that forces you to reevaluate what you deem as hip hop and what it is to you. Because everything academically, this is scratching, rapping, persona, knowledge, all of it is in there. So I end up loving it. And I still will tell my friends, and my friends actually love this song. The ones that I've put on to this, they, and they're hip hop heads and they love it. They just go crazy for it because not only is it showing like the live band aspect, but it's also showing like it's kind of like a bridge between modern and contemporary. And then there's a bit of jazz in it. And if you love hip hop, you love jazz, especially if you're from the East Coast. That was kind of our zhuzh, like hip hop and jazz. We're just bounded together. And so there's a lot of elements in there that speak to them. And so it worked for me. I'm a fan of it. I don't know about y'all, but I love it. Shoot.
Just and this album was so released, and we went back to the other one real quick. Sorry. So Diamonds and Pearls came out October 1st, 1991.
Mm-hmm.
The Love Symbol album October 13th, 1992.
Right.
So, basically a year later, which is crazy that, 'cause Diamonds
Absolutely.
and Pearls was a very successful album in its real time. It was a very successful album. Prince is on different TV shows performing, the songs were
Yeah.
hitting on. I don't know, he didn't go on tour in America with Diamonds and Pearls, but I know they
Did
did
he?
some. I
He
think
did.
he
He
may
did.
have did a couple spot dates, but that was about
Yeah.
it. But a very successful album, and the turnaround so quickly, comes with Love Symbol. And we're gonna move on, but to say there are a ton of great songs on this album. You may have heard a Sexy MF, was like,
Yep.
I want to say it was the first single off the album. If
It
you can
was.
think of that, like he had a song called Sexy MF, and in the song, again, I'm speaking to those who don't know, he had a
Mhm.
song where he says "sexy motherfucker" in the chorus. Imagine like the balls. That's a hip hop move because that's basically, as hip hop was that time, was known at that time. Where like you could be number one and not have no radio play.
Exactly.
That was hip hop. So Prince is like, I can do that. I can do that. I think I've done that before, Erotic City
You
and different
know,
things.
I might have contributed to the parental advisory
Right.
sticker. Just might have.
So there was a lot of bold moves. Obviously, too, this symbol, the symbol on the cover was the name of the album, and
Yeah.
at the time, we wasn't necessarily calling it the Love Symbol album. It was like, what to call it. It was like the Symbol album. And it hadn't been introduced as his name yet, if I'm not mistaken, when it
I don't
first
think
came out.
no.
No, because it still says Prince in the New Power Generation.
Yep. Yep.
But a phenomenal album. You definitely, I feel you on this one. I see where you're
Yeah.
going. So we'll
You see,
jump to
it's the buildup. I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, because you, how, like, again, if you're gonna measure this in terms of output as well, back to back albums like that, like he was playing Sexy MF while he was still on tour for Diamonds and Pearls because it was out as a single. Like
Yes.
that's crazy. That is insane.
Yes. Yes.
And we were talking about uh, maxi singles and things prior, and it just popped in my brain about to who it may concern, where he's like on the turntables
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
and he's got that mic, and he's just like, I think he has the chain hat. So
Hmm.
also, and I think I just love that. I saw that first too. That's actually before I listened to the album. I had saw that video,
Oh
and
wow.
I was like, "Oh, really? We're going in this direction." And that's
Yeah.
kind of what piqued my interest. And like, all right, let's definitely get into this because I want to see where he's going in that direction. And I was pleasantly surprised, like
All right.
completely.
So the next album I have here, if this is the next one on your list, is
Hmm.
"Come." And interesting thing of this is, so the last album came out in what, 92.
Right.
Now here's a couple of year break.
Yeah.
Now, a lot happens in that couple of years, but we are here at "Come," so I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, we'll come. This is kind of like we're starting to battle with Warner Brothers a little bit. We're starting to get into
Mhm.
stuff. So the name change is going to be in full effect. He basically just kills himself off in a way and was like, hey, this person's dead, we're about to resurrect a new person after this. And you get into the most beautiful girl in the world that like
Mm,
comes, is this most beautiful girl in the world is before this, correct?
yes, yeah.
Yes, because it was a February release. Like, so he has the most beautiful girl in the world, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna kill Prince off, and then we're gonna go into the gold experience. And this album, it's super random, but it works at the same time. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
in terms of conceptually, um, some people could view it as like a chaos and disorder in the way where it's just like, I feel like he kind of just put this out just to
mm,
put it out. But I actually think this works perfectly in his discography. I think songs like Pheromone and um, Space, all of it is natural progression from where he was picking off from the love symbol. And it just took it to the next level. But this is where you really see him fully immersed in hip hop and house and all the things that he was playing with in
mhm.
the Diamonds and Pearls and the love symbol. There's a direct lineage to, and it kind of just seems like he streamlined it more with Cub, and then made it more sexual. On top of that, the sexual, oh, I didn't even want to say undertones; they're overturn tones at this point,
Mm,
because uh, we've got the moaning, all of that. It's
right.
visually, it's completely different, and it's black and white, mind you. All of these other albums prior were all color. They were all darker in tone, but you're coming from something that, having a huge color palette to just now monotone. So this is a statement album for sure, and it's a standout in that. um but yeah, that's a little bit what I have to say about Cup. I could say a lot more, but I'm doing a presentation, so I can't say that
Oh, for
much.
sure.
So
Yeah,
I got to stay for the presentation. But yes.
yeah, "Come." Well, I wanna keep it, not gonna say I
Hmm.
was gonna keep it on negative, but, this is a great run. This is still a part of a great run. It was just, I remember when this came out, and it came out at the time where I was really, getting bootlegs and things, leaks were starting to happen, and for me, it was a sense of where a lot of the songs that were on this album and songs that were not on this album had been leaked out to the fans and been kinda playing them for a while, and so the anticipation was, "Oh, Come album, this next album's," not to say it's not dope, but it's
Hmm.
gonna be on some stuff because they 'cause they're gonna have, like, that "Acknowledge Me" song and, uh, "I Hate You," and, all this other stuff. "Days a While" was popping
And
at this
which
time.
I think Acknowledge Me should have been on this album. I don't
Yeah,
know why, but
yes, I remember when they were not on the record, and I was just like, "What?"
you just did Soul Train. Like, why is it not?
Exactly, like, what's going on? But so it was just it was a weird type of release,
Mhm.
I wanna say, I don't know if I have my things mixed up. Was 1-800 New Funk around
Yeah.
this time too?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you had
He had
that popping.
Together and all of that on there, which I love too.
Yeah.
But
What's the song with Nona? Love Sign.
Love Sign,
Like, no
yeah.
Love Sign, that was a hit,
What?
like, it was like, and I think there was a thing, there was like, they were competing against each other, like, Prince had his album out, and
Mhm.
then with Warner Brothers, and then he put out 1-800 New Funk, and
Yep.
Prince is more so promoting the 1-800 New Funk than he is this one, and I remember they
Mhm.
had some sort of, it was an ad in Billboard or something, I don't know if you remember seeing pictures of this, and it was kind of a little snarky ad, think
Yeah.
Prince put out against them or something. It's just a
It was a
wild
little
thing.
bit of a diss. It was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh,
You guys look that up, but it was a very, I think one thing as I'm looking at it now, I'm listening to you talk about it, it's such a big deal if you just go by the cover of this and the intention it seems
yeah.
to say, like, Prince is dead.
Yep.
So you have that imagery on one hand, but then to me, when I listen to the album, it's something different. Like, it's
It
almost as if these are 2 different, like, there's the Come project where he's doing the, uh, poetry and talking to the girl and all, getting her to do all that. And then
Right.
on the other hand, the cover of it is, "Well, I'm dead." It's
Right.
like,
And then
I
you
don't know
got
if
the
he addresses
Sacrifice
that
the
in the
Victor
music.
book. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting because Sacrifice of Victor, there's just
right.
visually, all of this is death, imagery of death. And
Mhm.
then sonically, you couldn't be more alive, which the juxtaposition is not
Yeah.
like I don't know if that wasn't it probably was intentional knowing Prince. It was definitely intentional, but the idea that maybe that he lives on regardless is what he's probably getting at here.
Mm,
And that's how I always kind of interpret it is like no matter what the dealings I look on the outside, which is why visually there's this black and white imagery and there's that the color is still going to remain in the music and the life is still going to breathe through my music. So whatever happens, it is what it is, but know that the music is going to be a constant.
mm,
So there's also a part of this is protest art that we have to acknowledge. So he's in the bouts of it with Warner Brothers, and although I still want to be creative and I still want to get all of this out of me, I still have to contractually
mm,
obliged to Warner Brothers to get myself out of the situation. So the art is going to look like this, but the music is going to sound great. And that's the same thing we see with Chaos and Disorder, the last album he did for Warner Brothers.
mm,
No,
mm.
he just threw it and was like, have it. But this was definitely intentional protest, whereas Chaos and Disorder was more of mindful. I mean, I'm not mindful, a mindless protest. It was kind of just like, here, I'm really done. Call it a day.
Right. And then the next one up, the Gold Experience,
Mhm.
which again, y'all can correct me, wasn't there a thing back then where there was talk about they were supposed to put these albums out right after each other? Like, it was supposed to be the uh,
Yep.
Come, and then boom, come and put the Gold Experience. Obviously, that didn't happen. This came a year later,
Mhm. I
the
think
next year.
it wasn't that like the thing that kind of irritated him and sparked him a little bit to put
Mm,
slave on his face a
yeah,
little.
probably.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons up in there.
And
But yeah.
again, some of these songs we had already heard at the
Mhm.
time, just, for the fans, famously went on David Letterman
Mhm.
and performed, Dolphin, which was great. Uh,
Yep.
Billy Jack Bitch, you had heard rumblings of that a little bit at the time. I Hate You. Uh, I was still wondering where the hell Days of Wild was, 'cause I'm like, "Okay, it's gonna be on this one, right? Or Acknowledge Me, it's gonna be on this one." Nowhere to be found. There's videos of those songs that were circulating at the time. But and it's not me to speak, this is a phenomenal album. But one thing I wanted to ask you about this, I was listening
Mhm.
to this album the other day. Um, this it's the the lyrics and the intention of some of these songs is interesting to me
Mhm.
because I'm like, I was just like, I was like, man, he's not a kid when he's writing. He's a man writing these songs. And I want to go to Billy Jack Bitch real quick because that was one of my favorite songs on this record. But let's play.
Right.
I tell you, every time in a song when I go, woo, it's gonna be a
Listen.
jam. Okay.
Woo.
Wow. And you're the perfect person I want to ask this to, or say this to. I was listening to this the other night, and I was remembering the stories behind the song, and I'm like,
Right.
okay. And I was like, I used to jam this. Not to say that I don't now. I was like, man, this is my shit. And I'm like, this was in the '90s, and this was, So when I started thinking, I was like, is this Prince's kind of version of "Wonder Why They Call You Bitch" by Pop?
Absolutely.
Because this is a song about
Absolutely.
a black woman named CJ, who's a gossip columnist
Yep.
in Minnesota. And yeah, this song, like, when I don't sometimes I don't associate it with, he's talking about somebody in particular, because I
Yeah.
agree with what he's kinda saying, like, you shouldn't be talking about people, but then I thought, like, "Man, you're a superstar." Like, you're like, everything you say is going to be taken by people as
Yeah.
gospel, just and I'm like, "You're going in." Yes, I mean, again, this is of the time, and it sounds like that's, Sonny T or somebody, "That biatch!" I mean, that was when
Right.
the bitch was like, it was g it's funny because even on this same album, if I'm not mistaken, he
Mhm.
says something about not calling women bitches.
Well, I was
In
thinking
a
about
sense.
Days of the
Go ahead.
Wild when you said that because it's so interesting that you heard these Days of the Wild first. So he
Mm,
says something about a b uh,
uh,
can I curse on here?
oh, of
But
course.
it's like something with a bitch and hoe. I don't think so. I forgot the name,
Ye
the section before that. But he's like he never called a woman out of her name, and then you have something like Billy Jack Bitch to just sit right on the table, like, hey, we're here. It's
right.
like, how would you feel if I called you this? And it's kind of like a hypothetical situation, in that he never directly said it, but he did endorse it. Then
Right.
we go to Face Down, something like Face Down, where he's like, "Let them motherfuckers kiss on my ass," period. And so you see the evolution of like, oh, Prince is
Mhm.
he's had enough. How the press is treating him. He's had enough in whatever way, and I do think that it is his kind of I wonder why they call you a bitch type situation, but I liken it to like that ending section of How Do You Want It, where Pac just calls out Bob
Mm,
Dole, C. Dolores Tucker,
mhm,
everybody that has just been dragging him from the beginning of his career about his lyrical content. And it was a stamp in the song. So instead of just taking like a section of his song, he just was like, hey, I'm gonna jam out completely. And I'm gonna bring my homies with me so they can back me. And there's no difference between this and the Dish record. Like he was just more logical than people are nowadays. But it's definitely again exhibiting hip hop qualities. The competitiveness is like, okay, you can write, I can write too. So I'm gonna put this song out for you. You want to be a journalist, all right? I'm
yeah,
gonna respond to the song.
and listen, that's my guy. We're looking at it now, years later under different lenses, obviously.
Yeah.
So it was a different time, but it's just, it's interesting to see even Prince, for as, everything that he is, uh, and this is me saying it, even he's still, sort of drawn into this sort of culture
Yeah.
of, oh, you said something about me, because he could have just said Billy Jack, whatever, but he said, "No, you
Right.
a bitch," like, and
Right.
leaned into that, and then said her name in the record. You know what I'm saying? That
Exactly.
was
And that's
crazy.
what
But I
that
think
was the
I will say I think he did apologize to this lady
yeah.
afterwards about this. So
Right. He's just, I had to get it off my chest. And a part of it is like, Prince, you ain't really have to do that, dog. Like you would have to call it bitch. But I understand your frustration. I get it. But part of me, like sometimes I'm always conflicted because sometimes like there this like I said with storytelling, these are actual people that have actually done something, and there's actually, I hate to say it, but there's actually girls that are and women that are like that out there, and that
for
label
sure.
is applicable. And I can't say that's a falsehood in people's reality because it's true. Like I can't say the same thing with hip hop. Like that is a type of women that people are, that's in their neighborhood or in their environment. So
Mm.
like it's always a sticky situation when you're in the or looking at it from a misogynistic point of view. And I'm like, yeah, he didn't have to say that, but everybody's human. And like people everywhere have called each other outside of their names at some point or on accidentally,
Mhm.
whether
Oh, yeah.
whatever the
He's
case
a
was,
man. He's a man like everybody
like you
else.
just and that's what I love. Like you see him as whole human right here. He was like,
Right.
listen, I'm fighting this war right now. I'm fighting it for the greater good. And you over here just talking about me. I got something to say. The South got something to say. All right.
Hilarious.
Not the South, but
Yeah.
he had,
And she and
he had
to
the
put
point.
it in perspective to people, I think she would have been like a local Wendy Williams, something like,
Yes.
think of that. So, you know,
Yeah.
and I think there was a story back in the day. Did you ever hear this when they were on the road or something and they pulled over or somehow, or she drove by
Mhm.
and she walked up to his car and he just said, "Billy," and then rolled the thing up and kept moving. I swear I remember reading this. I know somebody will
I
put it in the
haven't seen
comments.
that. You got to send me that story. That's
I have to
crazy.
find it. I was like, "That's hilarious." I could see him doing that. But,
Woo. Well,
yeah, so
we call that standing on business. He was standing on
he's standing on something.
business.
Alright, let's get back to okay, so yeah, the Gold Experience, uh, man, what else? There was a lot of, I Hate You was another
Yeah. The
stand
maxi single. We
and
got
again, I Hate You is another one of those songs, like, I could see I Hate You is the same persona that does Darling Nikki on stage to me. Like, it's that
mm,
same kinda energy where it's like he's saying that he loves somebody, but there's a lot of, uh, I don't know, if it's bitterness or just some
oh,
kinda
you know what they
anger
say.
in there or something,
It's a thin
because
line between love and hate. That's what they
yeah,
say.
yeah, because I think there's a story when Carmen Electra, he played that for her or something, and she
Yeah.
cried or something like that, like,
Yeah, made her cry.
but the song is dope, but man,
Yeah.
it's kind of a harsh song.
You can't like the emotion that peers through this song on each and I have to say the remix, like
Mm,
the Quiet Storm remix of this, you even feel that emotion intensified 10 times more. Because
mm,
he was like, he's belching on that. Like
yeah,
there was a lot of stuff, and I can't remember if that version got a lot of radio play in black radio.
mm,
Um,
oh,
but I know I Hate You does get a lot of spins, and again, you could just feel the intenseness of that. And there's a lot of moments on the Golden Experience where I feel vocal intensity, and that you can see part of what he's dealing with in reality is just
mm,
seeping through. And I love the vulnerability that's going on here. And it's kind of like it cracks the door open for emancipation where he just becomes super open with us.
yeah,
And in a princely open way, not all the way open, but it's the most open we've seen him. And I feel like this is just a sneak peek to that, even down to Gold and Dolphin. And you get to look at his ideologies because Dolphin kind of
mm,
peeks into forgetting the term, reincarnation, like those types of things. And
Mhm.
I don't know, you just get a little bit more of a peek into the openness of his ideology and where he's kind of headed towards, and this like a little taste of freedom, which I call it. And at this time, he chose when he would want to perform, where he wanted to perform. He was out overseas more, and I think he was like,
Mhm.
I have the Gold Experience book, which is amazing, and talking about his journey through the '90s. He was talking the way he was talking to press back then too. He just seemed
Mhm.
a little bit more liberated, and the fact that he was on the brink of liberation uh, is just so exciting, and you feel it through this album, like with songs Endorphin Machine, so many others. Like it's just
Yeah.
which was for Tevin Campbell. Like, come on, Tevin, you had a song for Tevin and you took it back and then was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna rock out. There's points of this that are like rock too, that are more rock oriented, which I love because we're
Mhm.
in like the alternative rock era as well. Like there's the folks like Alanis Morissette coming out and all this, like the landscape just fits
Yeah.
where it is positioned perfectly. And the fact that, did this see an official, I can't remember if this saw an official US release. It was released in Europe first, right? And then
Talking about the
it came,
gold?
yeah, the Gold Experience.
I'm not sure if it came out over there first. I didn't know about that.
I can't remember. I
He's
could be
definitely
wrong.
touring it out there first, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he was touring out there for sure. And they got more of the action, and that's where I feel like we just suffered because it just wasn't. He was going through his bout, and we were the sacrifice, and that's cool because he came back around with the
Mhm.
Emancipation.
Mhm.
It was like, hey, I'm gonna give y'all a whole tour everywhere. So it's okay. We kind of had to bite the bullet at that point and just
Yeah,
take what
that's
we had. But
we got, during this period, Exodus, I believe, dropped.
mhm. Which,
MPG, which is another banger.
yeah,
One song off of this that I, wanted to spotlight was "We March,"
yes.
'cause I think that's the first song, and I could be wrong, where it's sort of overtly talking about, Black, business and
Hmm.
things were like, and I guess, uh, sacrifice, you definitely getting the culture in there, but this one to me, especially listening to it now, I was like, "Man, I if only this had been a video and was, like, pushed as a single," because this also, coming off of, the Million Man March
March, yeah.
time, that was a different time. Imagine if they had a Million Man March today. But back then, there was the whole thing with Farrakhan, Million Man
Yep.
March, a million black men coming to DC, and Prince is kind of being a part of that. And this song to me has that spirit. But I love with this song, I think it's in the third verse. He's letting you know, like, listen, yeah, I'm all about, we gonna stand up and do the right thing, and we stand strong. And
Mhm.
throughout history, our people, are very righteous. And but he's let another leader fall. That's what Prince said. Let another one of our leaders fall. And he basically saying, we'll throw all of that kindness out the window and we're gonna hit the streets. And
Yep.
you hear it in the song when he's like, and they're screaming and the police thing. Like, that to
Mhm.
me, I was like, yeah, Prince saying, "We ready to tear this bitch up if we have to." Like,
Crazy, pre George Floyd,
yeah, this is
pre Black Lives Matter. This is like, you know what I mean? Like at this point, we had Rodney King,
yeah,
um, we had Yusef
Yusuf
in
Hawkins.
Brooklyn. Yes, we had Latasha Harlings, but those things were kind of very isolated incidents, and it seemed as though, like, for Prince to take that into his into his arsenal and be like, "Yo, I need to speak up about this." I'm actually kind of very mad that this should. Honestly, Spike should have just
Here we
reached out
go.
to him, like, put this on the Get on the Bus soundtrack for
Okay.
real.
All right.
This he could have had Michael and Prince on the Get on the Bus soundtrack, and I'm just, listen. We could have had On the Line, and then We March. I'm just, you
Hey, what
know,
do you think about
that would
that?
have
Yeah.
been perfect. That would have been perfect. And so I love how Prince shows his solidarity. in different ways.
Mhm.
Like, and it always makes me wonder, like, what he would have done presently. Like, what would have been
Yeah.
the projection of that. But he started with that. You see this lineage from We March, or even back to, like you said, Sacrifice of Victor, We
Mhm.
March. I would even go back to Free. Like,
Yeah, it just was more coded back then, but this is
it was definitely
blatant.
more quoted.
This is blatant.
That was blatant. That was like, yeah, we pro black up in here for real.
Yeah.
And I think also, where I was going with this, yeah, with We March, it's like a direct lineage from here to Baltimore. Like,
Mm.
that's just,
Yeah.
that's what I love about Prince. Everything is so connected. He makes our
Mhm.
job so much easier
Mhm.
to just trace. But
And just to throw in, I think it also, uh, even stronger points of this are made in the first, New Power excuse me, NPG album, Gold Nigga. You know, they
yes,
really get into that's why I wish they really put that out, because the stuff that they talking about on there, it was sick.
man,
It was sick cold to death. Black motherfuckers in the house.
have to
Uh,
get that out.
yeah,
We have to.
they were really touching on
We got a
some
little bit of like Diamonds and
yeah.
Pearls, like, the box set, but we need that because that's important, and also uh documenting his blackness and how he displayed, or how he was again in solidarity with his folk. Like, that's
Mhm.
important. And I think that's why I think the gold experience is super important, because he's in the turmoil of battle. He's on the front line right
Yeah.
now,
This
and
is the
to see
slave years. Yeah, he had slave on his face at
exactly,
this time. Yeah.
he wrote slave on his face. So this is important. Out of everything in his discography, what he fought for the most is ownership. We have to highlight this.
Yeah. Well,
That has to be a part of the 3-1. If I'm going to show somebody what freedom looks like and how freedom sounds, this and emancipation go hand in hand together in their follow up. So it
yes,
works.
and I just as we're going, one thing I didn't think about this run that we're going through, as much as Prince's music is integral to this, if I'm saying the right word,
Mhm.
his personal life even more so plays into these albums, because we've talked about a lot of his business and the ownership and the way he is seen and different things. That is
Right.
such a more that is just as powerful of this era, the slave, as opposed to some of the other ones when his you didn't get to hear those things about him. But here
Right.
he's him, the person is just as powerful as in this era. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Plays into the
I also love that Prince had his finger on the pulse of the culture just with his clubs. Like, he
yeah.
was able to tap in, and I think like during this era he was definitely frequenting his clubs in Miami
Mhm.
and LA to perform. Those were his outlet. He was satellite himself,
Yes,
having
I'm
so
glad you
that's
mentioned that. Yes.
yeah.
Those are
So
awesome.
you know what I mean? Like this, and he is such a black business owner mindset, like right now. So he is working on
Mm,
how am I going to, I'm in this box, but how am I going to, the wheels kind of start turning of how I'm going to market myself, how I'm going to put myself on how am I going to get myself exactly to the people that I
mm,
want to get to? And then with emancipation, you see him do these large distribution deals, get himself everywhere. He's just the
mm.
gears were starting with the gold experience, and then it just was like execution with emancipation.
Yeah.
And
Speaks
I
of
mean, even
emancipation.
though all the even though all the clubs like shut down after that, and I mean, clubs are not easy to maintain. Like, it's a really hard business to especially, I mean, now more so, but like back then still was super hard. Clubs would just come and go like that. So you had to be up and up. But I think LA lasted a pretty long time
Mm.
for its run. And then, but the unfortunate happened. But then we're here. We're in emancipation. We're free. So we can do what we want to do.
Emancipation. November 19th, 1996. I remember the day I went to the Midnight Tower Records to buy
Huh.
the album, and you know what other album came out the exact same day, and I bought that the same day, and I probably secretly have played that a little bit more that night. was House of Music, Tony. Came out the
Oh,
same day.
that's crazy. I didn't realize.
So I was like,
Yeah,
it was like, okay, I'm gonna be listening to a lot of music this
a
next
lot of
week.
fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, but yeah, Emancipation. Go ahead.
Okay, well, my case with emancipation is, I mean, it's self-explanatory. Look at the art. You got 3 albums. This is the most. When I bring people on this journey, they are so intimidated by this
Really?
because they're like, "It's 3 hours. What do you
Yeah.
mean, like 3 hours? I don't even know how I'm gonna get through this." And I'm like, when I tell you, when you start, you don't even want to stop. You just want to keep going because there's 3 different themes on each disc that you
Mm.
can tap into. And it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type dealio, which I love. And then it's just Prince sounding this is the true sound of freedom, like I was saying before. Like, he just sounds full of life. The battle is over. We gonna have sex in the summer. We got the baby's heartbeat. I'm
Mm.
living life. I'm getting ready to be a dad. I'm getting ready to step in my full adulthood.
Wow. Yeah.
There is just something about people being grown and sexy that is just so appealing, and stepping into your purpose. Like, you really he once he's accomplished his mission, he's like, now I can move forward. And that freedom was critical for him to move forward creatively. I mean, mind you, he didn't stop recording. A lot of this is just whatever. And this is why I skipped Chaos and Disorder, because it was just like a throwaway album. And he even said on the
Mm.
album, this is just for personal use only. So it's kind of like, I love
Let's
Chaos and
be.
Disorder.
I just want to be clear on that because there's probably people that this is their first time or they're just getting into this. So we did skip a record, right?
Right.
Chaos
We
and
did.
Disorder, and that was at the time kind of seemed like more of a rock edge type
Yes.
of release.
Yes. Had a little bit of hip hop ish with I'm Rock, Therefore I Am, but definitely rockish because Into the Light and all of that. Xana Lee, Dinner with Dolores is kind of
And
like soft.
I this is gonna sound harsh. I did hate when it first dropped. I actually got to hear the album early.
Oh, you did?
Yes, Michelle Denicello, if I'm saying her name, was one of her
Hmm.
peoples came they was in town, and they had it on cassette tape. It was like, "You wanna hear it?"
Oh,
I was like, "What?" But
that's
it
great.
just wasn't what I expected Prince to sound like. Because I love it
Yeah,
now. Like, it took me a
right.
couple weeks, and then I was like, "Okay, let me just calm down, Michael." But at the time, I just wasn't, and that happens with me on a lot of Prince albums, so
Right. And I can see that because when you're first, you're kind of like, first of all, the album artwork is crazy.
yeah,
Like, the
and I didn't even
syringe
see that at the time.
with it,
I
with
didn't
the
see any
heart.
of that.
Right, so it already translated, like, sonically, you were like, "Okay,
It
well,
just I was still waiting for Days a While,
you know."
Acknowledge Me and all those songs, and I just couldn't
Mhm.
understand because I thought those songs were like would be hits, and I was like,
Right.
"Why isn't these not coming out? Why are you putting this out?" That's why I was on that type of time.
"I'm vaulting this, what's going on?"
Mhm.
Like, um, but yeah, so I skipped over Chaos and Disorder just for that reason, and I'm like, he didn't even want it to be out. It was really just a fulfillment of his contractual needs, so it's like, there wasn't that much thought behind it other than the sequencing, to make everything seamless. But, with Emancipation, that was in the forefront. And I think he was working on both of them at the same time, but he had more of
Mhm.
his energy invested into Emancipation. And then
Mhm.
you could see the outcome. Again, he's starting his family. He's getting ready to step into whatever business, whatever the dawn is, this is the dawn.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
for him at this point, and so he's getting ready to step into that, and just this also reminds me of like Stevie Wonder's classical run, of how the orange tones and just everything from Talking Book to Inner Visions and
Mhm.
all of these, like Hotter Than July. It's just all of this joy, and he's just definitely stepping into that period of his life where it's like warmth is the idea, and he chose these tints and tones. Worked with Steve Park, made this not only visually but sonically feel that way. Talking to people like Dallas Austin, all of these folks
Mm,
that are just doing, um, again, having his finger on the pulse of the culture, incorporating drum machines up in this joint. Like he's had drum programming here. He's got other hip hop artists coming in with da 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 and
mm,
um,
mhm.
joint to joint. It's just like
He's doing
it is.
covers. He does covers on this album. The first one
Yes,
he does.
doing covers. Like who and turn the covers out. Like I love Bonnie Raitt, so for him to go and just like for me, that's one of my favorite songs by her. So forever, for me to prefer that version was crazy.
Mm.
Shantae Moore on La La La, I
Oh,
love you. Like she is so angelic. I love her voice. So for him to work with her, just tap into the R&B side, everything. It's just
mhm,
it's everything that I love about Prince in one setting, and just also seeing the maturity for him as a musician and seeing him just step out and making a song like Sleep Around, which is like a 10-minute house
mm.
oops, oops, oops song. And I don't mean to offend anybody like that, but it had the typical house and EDM style. And so again, there's just this festivity that's going on throughout the album. And if you want to throw on a party to this, you can do that. If you want to really snuggle up with your boo
Mm.
and just love on them, you could do that. There's just so much you can live life with this album. I lived with this album when I first heard it for like 5, 6 months. I would not. That's
Oh.
all I would because it had
When did you first hear
everything.
it?
When did I first hear it? I bought the CD. And this was hard because this is when this is post his passing because I was working through his discography in chronological order, and he happened to
Mm.
pass when I was at uh Love Sexy. He passed away. Um,
Oh, wow. So you were at
yeah,
Love Sexy at the time when Prince that's interesting.
passed away.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
I always say I was at yeah, I was like Sign of the Times, getting ready to go into Love Sexy kind of ish. Yeah.
What
So that era.
what just to jump into that real quick 'cause I'm fascinated. Like, what did you think of Love Sexy then at that time then with his passing? Like, just curious.
Oh, it okay, so in When Two Are in Love was the song, that's literally where I stopped at, and I
Mm,
had heard, um it's always emotional for me because that's the song I just kept on repeat because it was the last song that I was listening to prior to hearing the news.
mhm,
So, it holds a lot of sentimental value, but, um, I don't know, it's just that album symbolizes a lot of rebirth for me, so I was able to be feel a lot of comfort in his transition because
mm,
of the light that album brings out, and, um, it's so hard to kind of describe. I felt, more than I can verbalize. Like, if I could I
sure.
probably could do better writing about it because that's
Yeah,
my trait, but, there's this enlightenment that he has, this alignment in Love Sexy, and then coming out of like thinking about how the Black Album was the first thing and it was super dark, but to see how he just transformed himself spiritually
mhm,
and had that paradigmal shift in his character and just was like, I know that if this I feel like he had that philosophy, and I think he said this, right? If I did not want that to be my last body of work I put out,
interesting.
what people remember me by.
Mm,
And so for him to change that darkness to light, I was just blown by that. But I would say that stopping at Love Sexy was the perfect part for me because it just helped me know that he was at peace
mm,
for a lot of it. I feel, especially with songs like I Wish You Heaven. And he was just in a place of love, you know?
mhm.
And so I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like
No,
yeah.
I
I'm
get
sorry.
you.
I'm
No,
trying
I
to
get you.
do this the best way I can,
But
but
just
it's
yeah,
yeah,
it's just curious because 'cause you're hearing them after the fact, but you're hearing them in your real time, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And then Prince was still doing stuff at that time, and then
Right,
he
right.
passes, I was just curious how that sort of frames,
Hard
if at all, how
because
you see those. Yeah.
like
Um,
yeah, it was hard. It was hard. It was like
yeah.
now
And
like
then
I just
oh, go ahead.
started. No, like I just started. I didn't even get through your whole discography, and it's like, oh my god,
Right.
you know.
Emancipation too is another. Would you say emancipation is another sort of rebirth for Prince
Yes,
again? You know.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I love the two correlate. And it works perfectly. And it makes sense why I'm a love sexy person and an
Mhm.
emancipation person. Because spiritually, those two, there's so much alignment, you know? And it's almost like a mature version, a more mature version and extended version of what he was doing with Love Sexy. And I think it kind of just
Mm,
played out that way. And I think again, I always say this like he has to do certain albums in order for the genesis of future albums to happen.
mhm,
Love Sex is definitely Love Sexy had to happen in order for emancipation to happen
mm,
because that's the first stage of enlightenment for him for sure.
okay.
And Sign of the Times had to happen for Love Sexy to happen because Sign of the Times is his pulse on the real world and what's going on,
Mhm,
um, as far as having awareness and having a social conscious like actively, and then getting to you have to be aware socially of what's going on and then getting to the personal so you can
mhm,
be the man in the mirror as they say.
mm,
And it just works that way and then it evolves and then he just always has these points where he circles back to mindfulness like, and not to say that Prince isn't always mindful, but there's a point in which it's a hyper focus. And so after emancipation, the next rebirth for him is the Rainbow Children.
that's what I was gonna ask you, what would be the yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Alright.
yeah,
So, just to reiterate, when we jump back here again, Diamonds and Pearls, Love Symbol,
yes,
Come, The Gold Experience, and then
yeah,
lastly, Emancipation. So,
yep,
that run right there, those 5 albums, they don't all have to be, like, chronological one after the other, but they are all a part of a cycle,
right.
you know? And so you're saying you can get into that and you're going to get a whole
Oh yeah,
experience.
I could give a whole dissertation on this. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
We're getting started. See, this is lucky. This is my off day because I would be what
All
if this
right.
was the paper I would have gave it, man.
All right. Well, here's a point, ladies and gentlemen, where you can take a quick little break. Uh, we wow, so that was a whole part right there. Like you, and I want y'all to go and listen to them albums that she just
Yeah,
broke down. Like, get into those. Take your time. Come back and let us know. Like, what did you get off of that? What did you feel from that? Can you see the progression? What's the progression that you may have picked up on? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot going on there. And then, of course, there's a lot going on in there that we didn't mention. There are still other albums and pieces that
yeah,
came out through that time that is crazy because we did not mention Crystal Ball,
right,
which is just
right.
after Emancipation, but
Hmm.
that's a whole other thing too. Like, that's a look back at where he's at and what he did before in a way that we've never seen him do before.
Yeah,
He does his own bootleg of himself essentially. Um,
he does his own box sets before we.
exactly. Yeah, he did his special edition back then.
Yep.
For sure. Can you imagine and this what there could you ever you could, but could you imagine what a deluxe edition of Emancipation would look like? Like that would be just like,
Remember that meme? I think D'Angelo put it up
oh,
on
somebody did kind
Tweets
of
with
play with
that storage unit.
it. Right.
And like a fool, I would buy it.
Like, okay, how much are my monthly payments?
How much? Affirm, Klarna, what paid PayPal for? What do we?
Lord. The Emancipation crate set comes with its
No,
own
honestly,
18-track board.
they would have to separate that. Like they would have to just do the vaults, and you have like just buy Emancipation separately, and
That'd
then
be
just do the
nuts.
vault.
I could see the vinyl is probably like 20 vinyl set or something.
What? Maybe like $1,000.
Yeah, if
$1,000.
that. Whew. But yeah.
All right.
All righty.